Welcome, folks. It is Full Auto with wealthcurated.com once again, and this is an exciting one for me. They've all been good. This is our premiere season, and you guys know we've talked to the likes of Paul D'Orleans, Hugo Eccles, and Donald Farr from Mustang, and it's been quite a season launch. And this is another one that's going to be a highlight with Combat Motors. I'm talking to Jay Etheridge. He's the Chief Brand Ambassador there. And if you are not familiar with them, many of you who may not be familiar with the name are probably familiar with the past. We'll get into that. They've been around since the early 90s. And in a culture that gets increasingly soft, we have this, Combat Motors, and it is living, breathing, animated vehicular creations that are about activity and engagement and adventure. They're emotive, they are art in motion, and really they're quite unlike anything else. So Jay, welcome. Glad you guys are here and appreciate you guys chatting with us today.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having us.
All right. So as brand ambassador there at Combat, you're aware, and prior to that position, you go back further in the DNA of the company, which another company I have an affinity with and a lot of abiding relationships with, Curtis Motorcycles. Before Curtis, they were in the combustible engine venue. Now they're EV, but they were really on the cutting edge, as you guys now are, for these really raw industrial design, forward-thinking motorcycles that are rolling sculpture. Tell us a little bit about how Combat is what it is now, where it came from, and we'll dive in deeper after that.
Well, as some folks may know, Mr. Ernest Lee owns the company. It's a solely owned company now. The company started when Mr. Lee.
That's all right.
I apologize. Yeah. The company started when Mr. Lee recognized that Curtis was going out of the gas business and was not going to support the bikes that he had. So he purchased the brand. And, a lot of us, we weren't in the EV mindset ourselves. So we left the company. Mr. Lee brought us all aboard under his Combat name, said, you guys make wonderful bikes. Just do what you do. And, that's why we have the original gentleman that designed the P51 working with us. The man that's built every bike since 2008 is here with us. So we have the quality, the craftsmanship, and it's as if the company never stopped. We have a new name and a new owner.
Yeah, they really are remarkable pieces of machinery. You're in Birmingham, and Curtis is in Birmingham. The Barber Museum is in Birmingham. This weekend, I'm going up, in fact, for the Vintage Festival. I was there a couple of weeks ago for the Superbike races, Moto America, and wow, Birmingham, the hotbed. Who would have thunk it? You'd expect maybe LA or something like that, but how'd all this wind up in Birmingham?
Well, originally the company was in New Orleans, is where its true founding was, in the Louisiana area. After Hurricane Katrina, they were solicited to the Birmingham area, and it was a really good offer. So that's when the company moved to Birmingham, was in 2008.
Okay.
And they operated doing gas up until 2018, when they acknowledged that they were getting out of the gas business, going all electric.
Okay.
And myself and the others, we weren't wanting to move to the home office location for Combat is in Florida. None of us wanted to move there. So we just got a building here in Birmingham and said, let's keep this great product going right here in town.
It's so interesting. I mean, it's kind of become an epicenter for the South now for all things motorcycle. It's so unexpected, but it's really interesting. It's a beautiful place. Curves.
Well, thank you. And it's real exciting, with Atlanta getting all of the new movie items. I mean, Atlanta's turning into the new LA essentially, and we're only 2 hours from Atlanta.
Right.
So we couldn't be in a better position. There's a lot of high-end automobile dealers that are moving into this area now. So we're just fitting right in. Very
cool. Have you guys taken any of the bikes on the track over at Barber?
We haven't taken any over yet. Mr. Lee did when he first bought the company. He went over there. He was doing all of the shows, and he took some over to Barber. We'll probably do our next bike. We're working on the newer models, hopefully a 2024 release on some of the new models. And those bikes we're definitely going to have at the Barber track, definitely get some great footage and just a lot of national tours with the newer bikes.
Yeah, awesome. So let's talk about the ethos behind the bikes themselves, because the story and the design ethos is really what you guys are about. You seem to be, and you talk a lot about this in your literature and your vision casting. It is an absolute commitment to precision, to craftsmanship, to materials, to process. There's no wavering on what you guys do. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of design and build and some of your core ethos behind all of that.
Well, each bike is designed by a gentleman, Andrew Reuter. He's been with us. He designed, as I said earlier, the original P51. He's developed each of the new series in our CX4 architecture, which will be ending here very shortly. We have a few more bikes left to sell on that. The one thing that we do like to do is we want to offer something that no one else does, a fully handcrafted production series motorcycle, which is totally different. A lot of people, they think that it's a custom bike because we build it by hand, but no, this is a production bike. This is the same as going to Ford and getting your brand new Ford car just hand built for you. Yeah. And then that's kind of what we do. We want to be there for our customers. Our current commitment is we have no plans of not supporting this bike ever. And even the older models that are out there, we're doing everything we can to support those customers.
Okay.
You know, we're in it for the long haul.
Yeah. And so obviously, because you guys are where you are, that support takes place in Birmingham. I presume if there's ever an issue or an update or a tuning with a bike, it comes back to you guys in Birmingham, or how do you guys facilitate that? Do you send someone out, or?
No, well, it does. It will come right back here to Birmingham. Customers often send their bikes back to us, but when I'm out making a delivery, and I personally hand deliver each bike in the United States that we build. Okay. And when I'm out delivering that bike, if you're at 100 miles of my route, I'm going to stop by and I'm going to pick your bike up and bring it back to Birmingham on the house.
Okay.
We'll do the work, and then all you're worrying about is one-way transportation. But a lot of times I'm making another trip up past your house and I'll just drop it off.
Yeah.
You know, we want our customers to be happy. We want them to feel kind of connected when they're out in public. If you see someone else on one of the, one of our bikes, go over, talk to them. We've put a lot of groups together, something that has happened in recent years. In Texas, there's a small group of owners that they like to get together and ride their bikes on, once a month or so and have a great time doing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be super cool because it is an elite club. It's not like it's a big production volume. How many do you guys produce of a given model in a year?
Right now, we're at about 50 a year.
Okay.
Our bikes for the newest models coming out, the 2024 lineup will be what's known as homologated. A lot of people don't know that term, and that just means that it can be certified. It passes the sniff test. It has the proper mirrors, reflectors, all of that for worldwide distribution.
Okay.
And at that point, we anticipate 300 plus sales a year, just because we're turning down that many right now for places we cannot ship to.
Okay. Yeah, sure. And for our listeners who may not be aware, if you're familiar with the big production houses, 300 doesn't sound a lot, but you're talking about highly bespoke six-figure bikes here, and they are an elite club, and you could put these in the middle of your living room and they would be focuses of the whole house because they're just rolling sculptures. They really are that unique.
Well, many do. And if I can share a small story, I delivered a bike a few months ago to a gentleman in Washington, D.C., right off the Hudson River. I helped him get his bike up 2 flights of stairs to put it on this window that overlooked the Hudson. And that's where that bike will sit forever.
That's amazing. I imagine no fluids in it, right?
No fluids.
Yeah.
And that's an option.
Yeah.
If you're purchasing your bike and you just want it for display, we'll assemble it without any fluids.
Okay. Fantastic. So talk to us a little bit about the materials. This is like high spec military grade billet aluminum, right?
6061 grade aluminum. All of it is certified and tested, and each part is carved on a CNC machine. And what we like to do is we leave the beautiful carved lines on it. We don't polish it or buff it out. So you get a true industrial looking motorcycle.
Yeah.
And the great thing is the bike looks so tough and so mean, but when you get on it and ride it, it's just gentle, nice and sweet.
Yeah, they're surprising. Looking at the specs on the bikes and looking at them, I mean, you're thinking, my goodness, that's going to be 750-pound plus piece of machinery. But the specs, they're, mid 500s, right?
Wet, yes, sir. About 550 to 560 wet.
Okay.
And it's
Which-
because the aluminum is so light. The same reason they use it for aircraft.
Right.
You figure an airplane made out of steel would weigh 3 times the amount of the aluminum.
Yeah, for sure. But they give the appearance of such strength and formidability. It's surprising to look at the spec sheet and see that there's sub 600-pound bikes, which makes them, I think, really rideable, really accessible. And the seat height, they're about what, 29-ish?
29, yes, sir. They're about
Okay.
29 right now. It's a little bit high for some folks, but for the average rider, they seem to like that. It can be lowered a little bit if you want to play with the shocks on your own, maybe 1 to 2 inches.
Okay.
But for right now, they're delivered at about a 28 to 29-inch seat height.
Yeah, which is accessible for good range, but I'm sure there are some that would like to get in a 26, 27-inch saddle.
Right, and we have one gentleman right now that we're customizing a section for his bike. He has a 27-inch inseam. So we're actually customizing his rate to fit him personally.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's
And I admit that is a little bit of an expensive process, but for the distinguished gentleman that wishes that, it's something that we do offer and will do.
Yeah. So we live in COVID world, post-COVID world, and a lot of things changed in manufacturing during that period, and a lot of things changed in the economics. What's interesting,
Yes.
it's counterintuitive. I've been in high-end collectible assets across a broad category for almost 30 years now, and you would think that in the setting that we were all forced into in COVID, everybody would have gone into financial lockdown while we were in lockdown. But actually, at the high end, what took place was the exact opposite. It's really amazing. Everything from automobiles to rare coins, fine art, baseball cards, watches, you name it. At the top end, it exploded in not just volume of acquisition, but the values. So I'm curious to know how things fleshed out for someone like you guys, where 6-figure bike, so only a certain percentage of the population can even play at that level. We know they were playing very aggressively during COVID, but we saw the supply issues. So how have things unfolded for you guys?
Well, we're slowly recovering still from COVID. When you're a manufacturer that depends on manufacturers who depend on manufacturers, once this manufacturer catches up, it's still months before this one. And now we're finally getting to the point where we can catch up. As I said, right now we don't have any bikes built ahead because of the supply issue. And one of the things that does affect us is we pull some of the best products from around the world to assemble this bike. For instance, Behringer brakes, 4D brake system, a very similar system that stops a Boeing 747 stops our bikes.
Wow.
Well, France had an issue and they shut down during COVID for, what was it, like 9 months? And then they came back for a week and they went on vacation for their summer vacation.
Right.
And then as soon as their summer vacation was over, they started working again. But we're still weeks and weeks behind on deliveries from a lot of these vendors from overseas. We use the best carbon wheels in the world from BST in South Africa.
Wow. Okay.
And Blackstone Tech, they had some difficulties with COVID because each country had its own difficulties it had to overcome.
Yeah.
And, thank goodness, right now, people have got into the mindset that, let's get over this. Let's do what we have to do, whether it's a mask or no mask or whatever needs to be done. Let's get past COVID. Let's get our economy back moving. And that seems to be what folks are doing right now around the world.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time talking to people in the industry and do some bike reviews and stuff. And there are so many, even the biggest manufacturers are having issues getting bikes on showroom floors still. It does seem like, though, things are starting to loosen up. They're starting to make some progress.
Right, but there's some simple little AN fittings, like a 90-degree AN fitting. It's been on back order for 9 months.
Mm.
And
Wow.
it's one of those things. It's required to make our bikes. We prefer to use one certain brand, and hopefully we'll be able to get back with that brand because we know that it's very reliable. But what we have to do is what everyone's doing. If something has changed because of COVID, we just have to adapt and move forward.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the bikes themselves. So we've already hinted that there's a long lineage of design behind these bikes, going back to the early 90s, if not earlier. And you still see those early design principles fully employed. The Wraith has become somewhat of an iconic design.
Yes,
And
sir.
that spine, you call it, which is the gas tank, is really unique and super cool. Looking at the numbers, so on the low end, quote unquote, for you guys, $85,000 bike. It's the Fighter 117. Is that right?
That's correct. It's a 117 Fighter, comes with a 132 cubic inch S&S X-Wedge engine.
Okay. And even that bike is approaching 2000 cc, right?
Yes, sir. It's 1,916 cc in that engine.
Wow. It's just I recently tested the Harley Sportster S, the new one. That's like 1250. And there was so much there. It was a rip your arm off sort of bike. And the torque numbers were just ridiculous. But yours, I think, has even more torque. It's like 130 foot-pounds. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Wow.
In between 130, 145.
Okay. Machined aluminum, a monocoque, 7-inch backbone where the fuel is. Tell us about that design. That's so interesting.
Well, the average motorcycle has a fuel cell that's on top of the bike.
Right.
And when you fill that fuel cell, it's a top heavy weight. And when you're down to about a half a tank, experienced riders know you become used to it, so you don't notice it as much as you become an experienced rider, but that gas moves, it sloshes. The design of our bike, the fuel just runs down essentially between your legs so that you are always the center of gravity. Your center of gravity on your bike never changes because of fuel loss.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And it looks so darn cool. It's so unique.
Well, thank you. And I don't know if you know who Mr. Ellen Cathcart is. He's a very well-known journalist that goes around and writes on motorcycles. He was here yesterday, and it was one of the things he seemed to like about the bike was how low he was able to get on it, how he was able to, not even think as he was taking turns.
Yeah, it's fantastic. A bike of that size, but again, sub 600 pounds, to have that sort of comfort level on it. How long are the bikes?
72 inches.
Okay.
I believe. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So there's a lot of bike that the lines are just amazing. And
using the 19 front, 18 rear, it gives such a beautiful rake and trail and more stability than I've experienced on a lot of bikes recently.
Yeah. Tire sizes, front and back.
120 on the front, 240 on the back. So you have a really nice fat tire on the back, which also gives you better balance and stability.
Yeah, and having that small one on the front helps with the turning of that beast, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so the Wraith, let's talk about the Wraith. It is iconic. I understand there is a new one in development for your owner. Is that right? And he had plans of driving that thing across the country. Where are things with that development?
Well, unfortunately, COVID kind of killed that whole original idea. So,
okay.
Mr. Lee was asking me about that yesterday because it's my responsibility to schedule those items. And I said, I would like to either do that in the spring or maybe wait till we get closer to our new model and redo that. His Wraith has been assembled. And one thing that we love with Mr. Lee is he is one of the few gentlemen that truly test our bikes.
Mm.
And when I mean truly test our bikes, he pushes it to the limits beyond what most people would. And if he has a problem, he's here the next day. You know, why is it broke? We need this fixed. I don't want anyone else to experience this. So he has single-handedly just made our quality 100% better. So we have a whole lot of issues there. You know, for instance, we had a gentleman that purchased a new Wraith. He was going down the road at 95, and he managed to slow down to 65 miles an hour before the turkey caught the front of his Wraith.
Wow.
He brought it back here, and Jason managed to just take his thumb, push the piece of carbon back in place, and the guy was ready to go again. So there was no damage, no tear up. It was very structurally sound and held up well. You know, I mean, you figure a 30-pound turkey hitting you at
Right.
60 miles an hour. I mean, that's going to crack your windshield.
And he got Thanksgiving dinner out of the deal.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, that's the bike that's built that way. Let's hope a deer doesn't come out in front of one, right? That's a little bit different.
I hope not. I hope not. You know, just for the rider's sake, really.
Right, right. So the specs on the rake, I'm looking at them, almost 2200 cc and 132 cubic inch engine. That's a lot of engine.
Yeah, 2,163 cc. It really pushes out that it probably has about 120 foot-pounds of torque at the rear wheel.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, the numbers listed, say holding 143 foot-pounds at 3,500 to 6,000 RPM. That's a lot of low torque.
Yes, yes, it is.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, you know, I've been on a number of EVs, and I know you're not an EV guy, and you know, I'm a diehard purist and love the sights, sounds, smells, and the tangible experience of what we all love. But what's intriguing to me about EVs is the ride experience. I don't think it's the sole future of motorcycling. I think it's an interesting addition because of the technology and so forth. So maybe to add one to the fuel burners in the garage might be interesting for some people. A lot of great designers out there like Hugo Eccles, Untitled.
Yeah.
You know, he's I've had him on the show 3 times, and he's just a phenomenal builder. And so I think what it does offer is I think it's going to bring sort of a renaissance in bike design, right? You guys,
for sure.
You guys are already ahead of that curve. You've been doing it, but a lot of the bike production market has become so static. So many bikes look alike, or they're interpretations of a bike that already existed, right? And so guys like Hugo and others are taking this as a chance to bring a renaissance to bike design. I love that about it. And the riding experience is just very different. It's sublime. It's just you and the sounds around you. You're totally engaged without a lot to do. So for all those reasons, it is interesting. All that to say, the torque is just phenomenal, right? Huge torque numbers and super smooth. But looking at your numbers, they're pretty dadgum close on the torque. So I'd be really curious to get on one of your bikes and experience that kind of torque on a fuel burner.
Well, you know, I'll tell you one thing for sure. Gas combustion engines will never match the available torque that an electric engine has. Yeah. For one thing, you don't have the carburetor process. The moment you give power to an electric vehicle, you have that power. The only issue that I see with, especially a motorcycle, you know, your Tesla, you have the entire floorboard filled with batteries, and you can go about 600 miles, I believe is what it says. With a motorcycle, you're going about 100 miles because of the limited battery space.
Right, right.
Now, if you and I were going from, let's say we decide we want to go from Orlando, Florida to Birmingham, an 8-hour ride for me on my bike, because when I stop at the gas pump, it only takes me 2 minutes to go. Sure. When you stop to refuel on your electric bike, it's going to take you 4 hours. And we actually did a comparison between, you know, my gas burner van and a Tesla car. And it was going to take that person an extra 19 hours to go an 8-hour ride.
Right.
Just because they had to stop here for 30 minutes to charge. And then the next charging station was 40 minutes. And then they had a 7-hour delay at this one to charge.
Yeah.
When the technology for batteries gets to the point where I can fill my car up and I can charge my batteries at the same amount of time,
Right.
then I think it's ready for open market.
Yeah. And that we're heading there, but that's still off on the
But
horizon.
now for folks in cities, like if you live in the city of
Yeah.
Birmingham or the city of
Yeah.
San Francisco or LA or New York City, an electric motorcycle would be an ideal vehicle to have.
Yeah, no, they're brilliant for city because you don't have, the throttle response is what was intriguing to me riding in New Orleans, where I test drove a couple of the Zeros, for example. When you let off the throttle, it's almost like engine braking, right? Without all the work.
Right.
It's
Yes,
really
sir.
interesting. So, well, look, your stuff is fantastic, and looking forward to coming and seeing it in person. I'll be up there this weekend. Hopefully, we can connect. Would love to put my rear end in the saddles, and kudos to what you guys are doing. And so what's coming up? How many models do you have right now? 4 or 5, right?
We have 4 models right now. We're working on a 5th model, hopefully that will be released next year. But we have the F-117 fighter that starts at $85,000. We have the P-51 fighter that starts at $100,000. The combat bomber that starts at $125,000, and the combat wraith that starts at $155,000. It's the first time in our designs history, anyways, that we've offered 4 models at once.
Yeah, and they're stunning. Let's talk a little bit about, before we close here, the nuances and the differences between those middle 2 or 3, because the styling looks very similar. But what's the difference that accounts?
It is. Well, and the easiest one for me to start with would be the 117, because if you look at a 117 and you look at the P-51, you're going to say, well, that's pretty much the same bike. Right. I had a lot of people come to me and they said, Jay, is there a way you could come up with a bike that's under 100,000? So I took that challenge very seriously. I worked with our designer, Andrew Reuter. And what we did was we shaved a few items that were more high-end RT, like the carbon fiber. You'll notice there's a little less carbon fiber on this bike. Gotcha. Carbon fiber is very expensive to have hand laid and made.
Yeah.
So cutting a few of those items, going with a smaller engine on that bike, we were able to bring our costs down. So we were able to offer that at a little difference. And that's really the main difference between the P-51 and the bomber. We did a few nuances in seating stance. We adjusted the seat a little bit. Beefed it up some, and made it just a little bit more for the guy that wants that bike. Personally, I don't notice as much a difference between the P-51 and the bomber when I ride, other than my seating stance. But there's just some guys out there that'll tell you and swear that, oh no, it's 100% difference riding between the 2 bikes. Sure. And actually that model is more popular than the P-51 right now for sales.
Okay.
And the Wraith, we just decided we needed to have a new Wraith. The original carbon fiber frame was not working. There's been issues with those over the years, some leaking around the neck, items that you really could not forecast when you're doing an initial design.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Now that we understand how carbon fiber works a little better, we thought that it would be better to do just a lot of carbon fiber on the outside of the bike, very little structural carbon fiber.
Okay.
And design that fuel cell so that it's just so uniquely carved out of billet aluminum that it keeps true to what the heritage of the Wraith is.
Okay. Has that translated into an increase in weight, or has that been managed pretty well? That
has been managed. Well, the one thing that we do is we love to leave our parts really beefy, but when we have an opportunity to take some weight off of the bike, we shave that metal down. Rather than having a whole solid piece of metal, we might put some air baffles in there. Okay. So not only does it lighten the bike, but it forces the air to travel a little better around the engine.
Yeah. Interesting. Design process is never ending, right? Always evolving.
Always. Every day there's a design meeting here.
Yeah. Well, fascinating stuff. And the bikes, they all come in, is it just 2 color options? It's like a matte black and then that just straight aluminum, or as Hugo calls it, aluminium.
And one thing, we can also do a military gray.
Oh, okay.
We do that. If you'll look, the FA-13 combat bomber
Yep.
was, there was only 13 of those bikes scheduled for production. Only 12 were actually made,
Okay.
but all of those bikes are military grade.
Wow.
And the reason that we didn't produce our last bike on that was a gentleman wrecked his, so we had to sell him the kit to rebuild his entire bike.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
he has, I believe he has number 3 and number 13 all in one bike.
Well, that's kind of cool. Got something interesting out of the deal. Nobody else can say that, right?
Correct.
Well, awesome. I appreciate the time. Been a fascinating chat, and maybe we'll do it again and go deeper as our relationship grows. But look forward to maybe hooking up with you this weekend.
Sounds great. And when we're done here, I'm going to give you my personal phone number so you can text me when you're in town.
All right, awesome. Thank you, folks. It's Combat Motors. Go check them out. Their bikes really are, they're singular. They are astounding pieces of art. This has been Full Auto, wealthcurated.com. We'll see you next time. Take care.